Learn to fight. I'm your host, Manny, and we're back. So today we're talking about UFC 305, Adesanya versus Dricus Du Plessis. I'm giving you guys a breakdown. We're gonna go deep into it and figure out what's happening with that fight. So a lot of different things have come up. My prediction for the fight stays the same. I got Adesanya winning by flying knee knockout, probably in the third round. So I was chilling today and I was thinking, there's so many different tools nowadays to predict fights. So I pulled up and I asked ChatGPT what it thought and who it thought is going to win the fight and how. And this is what it said. I thought it was pretty interesting. So ChatGPT said predictions for the fight are split, but many experts lean towards Adesanya, citing his superior striking experience and ability to adapt, refocus after setbacks. Despite Adesanya's recent loss to Strickland, many believe he still has technical edge over Du Plessis, particularly in the striking department, where his reach, speed, accuracy could play significant roles. However, Du Plessis is noted for his durability, grappling skills, and finishing ability, making him a formidable opponent who cannot be overlooked. Some predictions suggest that if Adesanya can keep the fight standing and avoid getting drawn into a grappling match, he could win by decision. However, Du Plessis' grappling advantage, relentless style, and creative problems can create problems for Adesanya, especially if the fight goes in the later rounds. That's according to ChatGPT. ChatGPT is pretty interesting. I'm gonna start using it to predict these fights. But the way that I see it playing out, I see Du Plessis going in for the takedown. I really don't. He might get one or two, but I think it's very similar to the Marvin Vettori fight. I really see Adesanya getting a flying knee right up the middle in the second or third round. I was watching Du Plessis striking, and his striking really isn't that good. He is just a strong dude, big dude, and he's skilled, obviously, but Adesanya is one of the best fighters to ever fight in the UFC. And that was confirmed recently with Adesanya. He had like a 12 consecutive wins as a champion, or 12 consecutive wins. And there's only a few fighters who've done that. And those fighters are George St. Pierre, John Jones, Demetrius Johnson, people like that. Matter of fact, I actually have the chart right here of the fighters who have also done that. This is according to Twitter, to X. So Adesanya right here, 12 consecutive UFC title fights. John Jones had 16, Demetrius Johnson 13, Amanda Nunes 12, George St. Pierre 12. So he's up there with the greats. He's up there with the greats, and he's one of the best fighters ever. Like, a lot of people like to shit on him, calling him a fruitcake, calling him different things, saying he likes dogs. You guys can say whatever you want, but he's a legit fighter, a great fighter, and a real dude. So I have him winning with the flying knee in the third round. That's a lot of wins up there with Nunes. Yeah, Nunes is a beast as well. All those people are beasts. So regardless of if you like Adesanya or not, you have to still respect the body of work, So that's just what it is. So I want to get into a little bit of their fight camps, and I want to get into why this fight is important to me, and we can go from there. So online, there's a lot of guys like MMA Guru, which MMA Guru, I like his content, but he's annoying. He's annoying as shit. He's a fat dude, online talking shit, talking trash about real fighters. He needs to stay in his place, sit his fat ass over there, wherever he's at in London or whatever, and stop talking about fighting, because he won't ever come out to a real gym and actually spar with these fighters. So his whole career is just based on shitting on fighters and being negative and and he will never go in there in the cage, you know, which I get it. This is MMA. It's a toxic place, whatever. But the online narrative is that, you know, guys like MMA Guru are talking about Adesanya isn't a real African. Kamaru Usman isn't a real African. You know, Dricus is more African than these guys. I'm African, number one. I'm from Togo. Came to America when I was a kid. So I'm in the exact same position as Usman and Adesanya. And for you guys just be like, oh, he's not African, whatever, you're an idiot. You're a complete idiot. By that logic, MMA Guru, he looks like he's some type of Irish or German or something. He doesn't live in Ireland or Germany, so you're not a real Irish or German person, right? A lot of people just like to shit on these guys because they know they can't stack up to him. That's really what it comes down to. Regardless if you don't like Adesanya or not, you have to respect his body of work. He's one of the best fighters ever in the UFC, and these are the stats to prove it. Again, 12 wins, consecutive wins. GSP, 12 wins. Manu is 12 wins. He's up there with the greats. He's up there with GSP in the same light. And as a matter of fact, he has more wins than Anderson Silva consecutively. So he show him some respect. You know what I'm saying? But these people in MMA, they just care more so about shitting on the fighters. You know what I'm saying? That's just what they care about. So when you see someone like Adesanya, yeah, his family. First off, okay, one of the narratives is that Adesanya grew up as a rich kid and he had servants and he never struggled in his life. First off, you don't know what his life was in different parts of the world. That's a big thing. A lot of Americans don't know what it's like outside of America and don't really know much about the world. So in most parts of the world, especially Africa, you do have servants. You know what I'm saying? They're not slaves, but they're like indentured servants. Or you can get like a maid for super cheap. You don't have to be rich to have a maid in Africa, you know, depending what part of Africa you're in. So when the narrative of people saying like, oh, Adesanya had servants growing up, and they think it's like over here in America, if you have servants, you're rich. That's not the case in other parts of the world. If you go into Africa, you don't have to be rich to have a servant or a maid or whatever. You have someone who's living in your house, cleaning stuff up, doing stuff, and you're paying them. But you don't have to be rich for that. So that narrative needs to be squashed. Oh, he was some rich kid, blah, blah, blah. No, Adesanya was making what, $40,000 before he got in the UFC. $40,000 a year. You know, people just like to shit on Adesanya for no reason, like saying that he's a Chinese fighter and this and that. What's the issue with if you're living somewhere, Marty, my man. If you're living somewhere and you want to represent that place, you feel with the culture, what's the issue of being like, all right, I'm gonna rock the African flag, I'm gonna rock the Chinese flag. I'm from Africa. I was born in Africa, came to America when I was a kid. I want to rock the American flag. What's the issue? Right? You guys need to quit. You got DDP. Yeah, I mean, DDP is a good fighter, but I think he's overrated, to be honest. I think he's overrated. And maybe you could say I'm biased because I'm African. And as far as I go, I'm always going to go with the African fighter. For so you guys know how I roll, I'm always going for the African fighter. I don't give a fuck at all. Francis Ngannou, I'm never betting against Francis. I'm never betting against Adesanya. I'm never betting against Kamaru, period. You know what I'm saying? That's just what it is. But back to Adesanya, you know, the narrative is that he was some rich kid and blah, blah, blah. He's not African, blah, 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 blah. He's not, he's a code switcher and he's a fake and he's a false. Adesanya has given us more entertainment than pretty much any fighter. He gave us the rivalry with Alex Pereira. He gave us the Paulo Costa fight, humping Paulo Costa. He gave us all these great fights, and MMA fans are still ungrateful, still running their mouth, still talking shit. As far as there's another narrative out there with Adesanya and his dog, right? You guys, a lot of you guys who are running with that narrative are fucking weirdos, like legit weirdos. He's a regular guy. I don't roll like that with my dog. You know what I'm saying? I don't even like dogs like that for real. I do like dogs, but I won't even let a dog lick my face for real. You know what I'm saying? Like maybe if I really like the dog, I'll let it lick my face. But it was always weird to me when I seen people like letting their dogs like lick them in the mouth and so that's not my cup of tea. But Adesanya and his dog clearly have a strong bond, right? He has a fucking tattoo of his dog on him. That doesn't mean he's fucking his dog, you fucking weirdos. You know what I'm saying? Like you guys just don't like Adesanya. Not you guys in the chat, but people in MMA in general. So I think he's gonna be one of those type of guys when his career is over that people shit on him right now, but they're going to really miss him when he's gone because he's one of the most entertaining, probably the most entertaining fighter. I mean, no other fighters going to the ring. As a fighter, you have three things to get the crowd. You got the walkout, you have the actual fight, and then you have your post-fight speech. Those three things, it's very rare for a fighter to hit on all three. Usually a fighter only gets one of them. So for Adesanya, like for me, the fight that really stands out is when he fought Alex Pereira and he knocked him out. The whole thing, he killed that whole fight. The pre-fight walkout, the actual fight itself, and then the post-fight speech. Go listen to that speech sometime. If you ever want to be motivated and you ever want to be fired up, go listen to that speech. Matter of fact, I'm gonna pull that shit up right now. And that's why I don't get the Adesanya hate. You know what I'm saying? This is his post-fight speech when he fought Alex Pereira. So all these people who hate on Adesanya, it just really doesn't make sense. You know what I'm saying? Like he's an inspiring dude, and he doesn't really have any. I think it's just people don't like him because he's a better athlete. You know what I'm saying? Whatever he's cocky a little bit.
Your year just got
Fucking ads, but that's another thing. Like I hate it when people say like, "Oh, a fighter shouldn't be cocky. A fighter shouldn't be this. A fighter shouldn't be that." First off, you got to understand we're going in the cage and we're fighting dudes. Most people, 99.9% of people in the world would never go into a cage and fight another man. So, in order to do that, sometimes you have to get yourself in a mindset that is completely different than what the norm would be. And a lot of people don't, a lot of people can't understand what that mindset is because they've never been in a fight. Most people have never been in a fight, let alone a fight where millions of people are watching and a lot of shit's on the line and you're fighting a dude who's a beast. So, yeah, in order to do that, you have to be supremely confident to perform at your best. So, in order to be supremely confident, yeah, you might be a little cocky sometimes. A lot of times people make themselves cocky because they're actually scared and they want to trick themselves out of being scared. So they come with the extra cockiness. And the perfect example of this is McGregor. Whenever he started having his losses, you see how his personality constantly changed. He went from trying to be the nice guy with Dustin Poirier to being a guy full of rage and hate to being kind of like a nice guy again to he's like bouncing back and forth trying to figure out who he is so he can perform at his best because the fight game is a mental game and it's all about your mental performance. So when people criticize fighters and they're like, oh, this guy's cocky, this guy's this, John Jones cocky, you need to be cocky if you're going to go in there and fight another dude and say that you're going to beat this dude's ass and knock him out in front of everybody. You need to be cocky. If you don't, you're just dumb, you know? And that's the same thing Ali got. But going back to Adesanya, Adesanya is one of the most inspiring fighters there is out there. And I think MMA fans, we have a short memory, you know, but this speech right here had me fired up for months. This speech right here had me fired up for months. So Joe Rogan doesn't even let anybody hold the mic. And he said, yeah, let him hold the mic, you know, because he just conquered the mountain. Nobody's beating Alex Pereira. Only people who are going to beat Alex Pereira is John Jones. I mean, I don't see Ankalaev beating Alex Pereira either. I see Ankalaev getting KO'd with a flying knee. I hadn't thought of it in that way, with fighters being cocky. Well, that's why you come to the Learn to Fight podcast. You get a different perspective. But back to the speech. And you know, most people won't ever feel that level of happiness, because in order to feel that level of happiness, you have to suffer, you know, and you have to conquer your fears. And you know, he went in there, he fought a dude who knocked him out 2 times. He fought a dude who's a dangerous fighter, who's an intimidating fighter, and he knocked him out. You know what I'm saying? He fought a dude who is just a savage, and he knocked him out, and he overcame his fears, and he overcame everything. Most people won't ever feel that level of happiness because they're not willing to go through what you have to go through in order to feel that. And that's really the bottom line. Yeah, so I don't get how you can watch that and be like, all right, I'm gonna go hate on Adesanya. I'm gonna go hate on him. I'm gonna go talk trash on him. I'm gonna go, you know, just shit on the dude. I don't get the hate for Adesanya. I think really it comes down to just people being jealous and being bitter, you know, and just wanting them to fail for whatever reason. But that's not how we roll over here, you know. We're all about positivity over here. So that's why one of the reasons why Adesanya will always get my respect and my admiration. You know, DDP, I don't really know much about the dude other than he's a young guy, he's a good fighter, he's an athlete, you know, and I've seen him fight multiple times. And, you know, there's not really anything that really stands out to me as far as his fighting style or him. He seems like he's extremely tough, and he's a good fighter, obviously, but I just don't really see it. I don't really see it happening for him in this fight, especially because Adesanya is coming off of a loss, you know. So this was like a little meme that came out the other day. So you're telling me you're the real African champion, and in there looking at each other's schlongs, and people are like, "Oh, Adesanya, he's a fruitcake. He's this, he's that." First off, fighting has always been a little fruity, a little slightly fruity. Like when Mike Tyson's out there talking about, you know, he's gonna make this dude his girlfriend, and he's gonna do this and do that. Yeah, fighting. That's how it is. That's why John Jones was saying to Daniel Cormier he's gonna make him his girlfriend and this and that, because you're trying to dominate another man. You want to dominate another man's spirit. You want to tell him you're a bigger man than him, and you could make him your girlfriend if you want to. So Adesanya posting this picture with this schlong out and saying he's the real African champion. I agree. I would do the same thing. I would do the same thing. And don't pretend like you guys out there with your friends don't say fruity stuff. Stop the cap. Don't pretend like you guys out there aren't saying fruity stuff with your friends. You know, I've seen you guys out there. So, but you know, people want to criticize Adesanya on this, which is one thing. It's like, okay. I mean, I don't agree with. There was another African fighter who said some super fruity stuff. He was like, my goat or something with the dog. I forget which UFC fighter that was, but I mean, that's funny. They're being funny. They're having fun. Like, quit being weirdos and trying to make it something that it's not, you know. But let's look at Adesanya's training camp and just kind of like, you know, where he is in this fight. You know, I mean, there's not much training footage of him leading up to this fight, you know, at least on his Instagram. Here we go, or his whatever, X. I mean, he looks in good shape. He looks in good shape. He has a little bit of gyno, which, you know, that's just what it is. Got to be a little bit fruity to roll around with another dude in underwear. I mean, I don't agree with that necessarily. There's nothing fruity about rolling around another dude in your underwear. This is just man stuff. We're just dominating other men. But you know, in the ancient Greeks, they would roll around. They would fight naked. Actually, in pancreation, they would fight naked, and a lot of those dudes actually were a little fruity. Like, you know, they became so, they had so much testosterone that they started like kind of like wanting men. I don't know. I don't know how they were rolling, but I mean, maybe that's what's going on, but I don't know. I mean, you guys have rumors with John Jones being gay or whatever. There actually is like, if for people who do steroids, if you do the wrong steroid, you can actually become gay. Did you know that? Because your testosterone and your sex drive is so high that you want to just to fuck anything and everything. This has actually been proven. Certain steroids like Turinabol, I believe. You know, so some people had a theory that that's what happened with John Jones, but I don't believe in that. I think John Jones, first off, he's never shown any indications that he doesn't like women. He has a wife that he's been with forever, right? He crashed his Bentley with two strippers in the back. He didn't crash his Bentley with Mike and Steve in the back. You know what I'm saying? He crashed the Bentley with two strippers in the back, two women. So I think people just like to hate. You know, people just like to hate, and that's just what it is. Dang, I didn't know that about steroids. Yeah, everyone thinks doing steroids is all fun and games until they become gay. You know what I'm saying? Like, nah, it's nothing. Like, that's why I don't agree with guys like Gordon Ryan and these different guys who are promoting steroids, because there's serious repercussions with that stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like, there just is your high blood pressure, the sex drive, all these different things that can happen when you're doing that stuff is no joke. So that shit's no game. But going back to it, I mean, Adesanya looks in good shape. You know, he looks strong. He has the gyno still.
Anger is the
You
part
know,
of you that knows your mistreatment and abuse are unacceptable. Your anger knows you deserve to be treated well and with kindness. Your anger is a part of you that loves you. Anger is important. It needs to be expressed, acted out, and vocalized. When it doesn't, it begins to manifest into rage. Its intentions also take on a different, more sinister tone than survival and protection of the self the longer it remains bottled. But it can be misplaced, especially when suppressed for a long time. It speaks a single message that is important to us, but it isn't the entirety of us. Anger is just anger. It isn't good, and it isn't bad. It just is. What you do with it is what matters. It's like anything else. You can use it to build or to destroy. You just have to make the choice. Anger is...
and you know what? So he also has the right mindset, because this is something I talk about all the time. When I was younger, I was super pissed off, super angry all the time, super pissed off. And that helped me in my martial arts, because it gave me the energy and the drive to go train. As where my life got a little bit better and, you know, had a little bit more money, things were a little bit better, moved to California, I was less pissed off. And it actually did affect my fighting a little bit, because I wasn't as pissed off, you know, like anger is, I feel like anger is my superpower, but I use it in the right way. Like, you know, instead of being like a toxic with it, like being more pissed off for greatness, more pissed off for success, pissed off that, you know, I want to get this thing done. And I'm using that anger and that energy to give you the energy to go push through a workout or push through whatever. So Adesanya saying that he's getting his mind right for the fight, and that's a good sign. That's a real good sign. I think when he fought Strickland, he wasn't pissed off. He wasn't angry. You know, he was just kind of like deflated almost. So that, just with that alone, I think we're going to see a completely different fighter this time around, and we're going to see a good fighter. When he was angry when he fought Alex Pereira the second time in the UFC. He was super pissed off. You could see it in his face. He came out to the Saw music, and he came out and he was pissed the whole fight. Go back and look at that fight. Look at his face. He was super pissed. Ended up knocking him out. You know, so anger is a great tool for a fighter, but also for anybody in your life. But I think the thing is using the anger in a way that it's not toxic. It's not ruining your life. You could be pissed off and angry at the world and go take it out on people, or you could be pissed off and angry at the world, pissed off and angry, and use that to motivate you to work harder to change things. You know what I'm saying? So that's something I really believe in. But going back to his fight camp, I mean, he has a whole squad of guys, a great team, and they looks like they really have a good tight bond with each other. You know, he looks in good shape. He looks focused. You know, sparring, he looks good. Like, there's nothing really more to say. You know what I'm saying? There's nothing really more to say. It looks solid. But now let's look at Dricus. Let's see what he's at. See what he's been doing. We already know. Let's see, Dricus. We already know Dricus is always going to come to the fight in shape. You know, Dricus Du Plessis. All right, let's see here. So Dricus, I don't see any footage. All right, here we go. Here's footage of him training right here. So
think about why you're gonna get dazed, all of you. Think about it. This is my assistant coach. This way. So if they up, I help them fix the problem.
So they do some type of training where that second fight between Alex and Israel was the best fight I ever watched. Yeah, that was one of the best fights ever because of so much of the context of the fight. That was an incredible fight. But for me, the best fight I've ever watched, I have to say, was one of the best fights. But one of the best fight I've ever watched has to be, I mean, it's hard to say because there's so many fights, but off the top of my head right now, I think I have to go Alexander Gustafsson versus John Jones 1. That was an incredible fight. Also, one fight that really stands out to me is Dan Henderson versus Shogun, the second fight. They had a crazy fight. There's a lot of new MMA fans, and a lot of guys never seen those fights before. The Dan Henderson versus Shogun Rua, I believe it's free on YouTube. Yeah, you guys got to watch that fight. Incredible fight. Absolutely amazing fight. But Dricus and his coach, they do some type of training mechanism where anything he does wrong, he actually gets tased. And that's very interesting. So he's training his mind to associate pain with like keeping his hands down or whatever. So that's pretty interesting stuff. They're doing definitely interesting training methods, but let's go back to the best fights we've ever seen. I'll say the top 5 best fights I've ever seen, right? John Jones versus Alexander Gustafsson, the first fight. I have to say that was one of the best fights. The fight, Anthony Pettis versus, there is a fight in WEC. This is old school MMA shit. If you're new to MMA, you probably never even heard of this fight. There's a fight, Ben Henderson versus Cowboy Cerrone. That fight was insane. If you can find that fight in the WEC, it was one of the best fights ever. The WEC had some of the best fights ever. This is where Jose Aldo came from, Cowboy came from, Anthony Pettis. Pretty much everybody in that 145-pound weight class, they came from the WEC, and they started out in California. Third best fight I've ever seen, probably Michael Chandler versus Eddie Alvarez, the first fight in Bellator. Amazing fight. Another fight, Gilbert Melendez versus Diego Sanchez. Great fight. Another fight, Roger Huerta versus Clay Guida. Incredible fight. These are fights that people have, a lot of these new MMA fans have never heard of. This is all I've been doing. Oh, also there's so many more special mentions, like Anderson Silva versus Chael Sonnen 1. Incredible fight. You know, a lot of you guys are new MMA fans. You got to go back and watch those fights. And a lot of the fights, there's fights outside of UFC that are just way better than the UFC fights. UFC doesn't have all the best fighters. But let's go back to Dricus and look at what's going on in his training camp and what they got going on. So, you know, he looks in shape. He looks how he always looks. You know, hit that like button as well. But he looks how he always looks, in shape. I mean, I don't know. He doesn't look like he's on steroids to me. He just looks like a guy who's been working hard his whole life and has stayed in shape. You know, let's see what we got here. So this is like a tail of the tape type of deal. 7-fight win streak, longest active streak in the UFC middleweight division. 6.4 significant strikes per minute. Takedown accuracy. 8 UFC title wins. 8 performance bonuses. 13 knockdowns. Yeah, this is setting up to be a hell of a fight. Who do you guys got winning? If you haven't said yet, you know, say who you got winning and how. Let's continue going through. There's not much on his training footage here. I'm not seeing much, you know. I thought that was Daniel Cormier for a second. No bullshit. I'm not even trying to be funny right now. I thought that was Daniel Cormier for a second. But I digress. So let's continue going on. I mean, there's just not much going on in his you know, there's not no training footage here for me. So I'm not really, you know, taking much from it, you know. But Adesanya by knockout. Yeah, that's what I got as well. Adesanya by knockout. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna ask ChatGPT. What are the best MMA fights in history, and we're gonna kind of look through that and see what we come up with. All right, so here we go. I think DDP is going to surprise and defend the belt. You never know. MMA is a crazy place. So according to ChatGPT, here are the best fights. Forrest Griffin versus Stephen Bonner for the Ultimate Fighter. Why it's legendary. This fight is often credited with saving the UFC and bringing MMA into the mainstream. It was a back and forth war with both fighters showing incredible heart. Griffin won by unanimous decision. Both fighters were awarded UFC contracts due to the bout's significance. Impact. The fight helped the UFC gain television deal with Spike. And Stephen Bonner, rest in peace, he passed away last year from I believe fentanyl overdose, which, you know, when we look at the Ultimate Fighter, it's kind of messed up, like what they did with the Ultimate Fighter. You know what I'm saying? Because you get a bunch of guys who are pretty young, filled with testosterone, and then you put them in a house. You know, Adesanya definitely has the advantage, but DDP has fighting spirit, which makes him more dangerous. That's an interesting take. That's a definitely interesting take. But let's look. So the Ultimate Fighter, right? I don't get how it's even legal. First off, you know, like, hold on one second. All right, so the Ultimate Fighter. You have a bunch of guys in a house who are young guys, usually, right? And they're sitting around and they have nothing to do but train and drink. And, you know, we saw Chris Lieben go on there, have a full-blown, you know, fight, you know, trying to knock people out, punching his hand through the wall, bleeding everywhere. Like, people got serious issues from going on the Ultimate Fighter. You know, that's why I would never do the Ultimate Fighter, because I feel like it's a shitty contract. But maybe I would. I don't know. We'll see. But I don't know. I don't know, man. I feel like the Ultimate Fighter was not a good. I mean, it's a great show, but I feel like it wasn't good for the fighters. I feel like it really destroyed a lot of people's lives more than we even realized. Diego Sanchez came out later on. He said that he had like a alcohol problem, alcohol addiction, and I have to say, part of that has to be from him being on the Ultimate Fighter and being around drinks all day. They want drama. That's what makes the money. Yeah, it's definitely true. It's definitely not good for the fighters. Definitely not. So next fight, like I said before, Mauricio Shogun Rua versus Dan Henderson, UFC 139, 2011. Why it's legendary. This fight is considered one of the greatest bouts in MMA history, showcasing an epic 5-round battle between two legends. Both fighters were pushed to their limits, and Henderson won by unanimous decision in a close and brutal contest. Impact. This fight was a testament to the skill and resilience of both fighters, still revered as an example of MMA's best. That fight, Henderson versus Shogun, is one of the best fights ever. You guys have to see that fight if you've never seen it, you know. And I've noticed so many new MMA fighters or MMA fans nowadays. So a lot of you guys probably never seen that fight. But then next fight, Robbie Lawler versus Rory McDonald. That fight was also insane. I know a lot of you guys probably remember that fight. But Robbie Lawler versus Rory McDonald, why it's legendary. This fight was an absolute bloodbath, with both warriors showcasing incredible toughness, determination. Lawler retained his welterweight title by TKO in the 5th round after a brutal war that left both fighters severely battered. Impact. This bout is often remembered for its sheer violence and heart displayed by both fighters, particularly Rory McDonald, who sustained severe injuries but kept fighting until the point where he had his nose just destroyed. And it's one of the most legendary pictures of all time. Matter of fact, I'm gonna see if I could find that. Picture. Is Rory? He's bleeding all over the place, you know, and he finally just got hit too many times and he had to tap out. But you know, that's a fight I forgot about. There's so many good fights; it's pretty easy to almost forget. Anderson Silva versus Chael Sonnen won. Of course, that's one that I talked about earlier. Why it's legendary. Sonnen dominated the fight for 4.5 rounds, but Silva pulled out a miraculous submission in the final minutes to retain his middleweight title. This fight is famous for Silva's incredible comeback and Sonnen's trash talk leading up to the bout. Impact. This fight solidified Silva's legacy as one of the greatest fighters of all time in MMA history. This is according to ChatGPT. ChatGPT is saying this. And John Jones versus Alexander Gustafsson. Damn, there's a lot of fights on here. John Jones versus Alexander Gustafsson won, of course. Chuck Liddell versus Vanderlei Silva in 2007. Frankie Edgar versus Gray Maynard 2. That was an insane fight. A lot of people don't remember that fight either. I'm going to make a whole video, a whole series on this topic right here. Matt Hughes versus Frank Trigg. There's so many good fights. There's so many good fights throughout the whole history of the UFC. And I feel like, you know, when you hear a lot of old heads talk about basketball, they're like, oh, back in the 80s, it was the best and blah, blah, blah. And that's how I feel about MMA. I feel like back in the 2010 era, 2010 to like 2015, 2009. I feel like that was the golden era of MMA. We had Brock Lesnar and we had Cain Velasquez and Chael Sonnen talking shit. Anderson Silva beating people's ass. John Jones in his youth, you know. I feel like those fights were some of the best fights ever. And the fights of today are still good, but they're not the same. But I think this fight right here, UFC 305, Adesanya versus Dricus, has the potential to be one of those types of fights, a classic fight, you know, just with the sheer you know, animosity that both fighters are coming with. I love that shit. I absolutely love it. But we're gonna go back and we're gonna watch one of these hillbilly fights. You guys know I love a good hillbilly fight. I love all fights. I love them all. Kimbo Slice, when he was fighting in the backyard. Matter of fact, let's watch Kimbo Slice. Kimbo Slice, backyard fights. A lot of you guys have never seen these Kimbo Slice fights. One of the best fights. I mean, they weren't good fights by any means. They weren't like technical, or they weren't technical at all. But it was just two dudes thrown down in the backyard, which is sometimes what we need. You know, you sometimes we just want to be entertained. And it doesn't always need to be the best fighter ever, right? So here we go.
Go, Bird! Go, Bird! Finish that! Hey, run it, Bird!
Can you imagine? You imagine this is back in the day. These dudes don't really know how to fight, which we've seen Kimbo going to UFC and not really, you know, when he's fighting real fighters, he got pieced up. But there's something captivating about these types of fights. Kimbo Slice, even though his MMA career might have not been like the best, he has to go down as one of the best fight. I don't know what you would even say. Fighters. He's not one of the best fighters technically, but he is a special fighter. You know what I'm saying? Especially to come from a street fighting background to go into UFC, Ultimate Fighter, regardless if he won or lost. The dude went out there, especially as an older man, and he was an inspiring guy. You know, Kimbo Slice, rest in peace. Uncle FC, and dude's about to get knocked out right here. He's definitely about to get knocked out. Watch this right here. You can see it. Can you see it? That hook that's cocked right there. He's about to drop that bomb on him right now, and he's gonna knock him out. Hit that like button. You hit that like button. Show some love. These backyard fights are crazy. They feel more dangerous than pro fights. They definitely are more dangerous than pro fights. They're much more dangerous than a pro fight. The UFC, the way the UFC is promoting this fight, the fight for Africa, and who is real African, is so cheesy. Yeah, I agree for sure. But you know, the UFC is built off of you know, racism. Let's be honest. The UFC is built off of racist fights or nationalistic fights. So you remember when Rampage fought Rashad Evans, that fight was promoted as black on black crime. You know, when Kobe Covington is fighting Kamaru Usman, Kobe's supposed to be like the racist character, right? So we love these type of race fights or nationalistic fights, right? And I have to be honest, I love it as well. I'm toxic as well because I love the shit as well. But you can see Kimbo's about to knock him out here with this left. Damn, do you guys see that?
That's where half of his name came from.
That was brutal. He's smiling. What the fuck are you smiling about? You got your ass beat. There was nothing to be smiling about. If I have my eye off of my head like that, I'm not gonna be smiling. I'm gonna be pissed off. But these backyard fights were damn legendary fights. Kimbo Slice, you know, it's not always about who's the most technical and who's this and who's that. Sometimes you just want to see a good fight. Yeah, that is hard to look at. Let's watch more. if MMA doesn't work out, I'm just gonna start fighting people in the backyard. I'm just gonna start fighting bums in the backyard and grow out my beard and then just do it like Kimbo Slice. Yeah. But those fights were damn entertaining. They really were. Let's watch more of this shit. At one point, Kimbo fought a police officer. He fought a police officer, and the police officer beat his ass. And that guy was actually a good fighter. And he ended up like getting fired from the police department or something. But yeah, I mean, it's just these random ass people would show up, I guess, and just want to fight Kimbo. Like some old school samurai shit. Pretty interesting. You imagine you're fighting a baby oiled up Kimbo Slice in the backyard in 2002. You know what I'm saying? Could you imagine that? Oil them up, Ferg. Oil them up. They used to fight. They would fight for a couple bucks. It was like maybe like $1,000. They put all the money in the pot, and then if you win, whoever wins gets that money. But that $1,000 is not shit. Like you seen that dude's eye hanging off his head. That $1,000 is not gonna pay for that, bro. Yeah, man, that's Kimbo Slice. Kimbo Slice. But back to the fights, UFC 305. So there's other fights as well. So the other fight that I'm interested in is the Jairzinho Rozenstruik versus Tai Tuivasa. So with this fight, I'm interested because Tai Tuivasa is in a place where he kind of needs a win. He kind of needs a win. He fought Ciryl Gane, and Ciryl Gane kind of pieced him up. Yeah, there's a lot of safer hobbies in that for sure. Ciryl Gane kind of pieced him up in that fight, and now this is his comeback fight. So we'll kind of just go through the whole card. Kara Vance versus Steve Erg. I don't know who Steve Erg is, to be honest. I'm just going to be real. I've seen Kara Vance fight multiple times. There's too many fighters. There's too many fucking fighters and too many fights to keep up with nowadays. We're really on like UFC 400. So I don't know who all these fucking guys are. But you know what we're going to do, actually? We're going to ask ChatGPT who's going to win. And then we're just going to kind of look at it like that. All right. So Kara France versus Steve Erkig or some shit. Who wins? I got Kara France winning. Just because I've seen Kara France win. All right, so ChatGPT says in the incoming fight, Kara France versus Steve Erg, predictions lean slightly towards Erg winning the bout. Kara France is known for his striking ability, speed, and experienced top-level opponents, being a product of famed city kickboxing along with fighters like Adesanya. However, he struggled in some recent high-profile fights. So on one hand, Steve has gained attention for his size advantage, resilience, and well-rounded skill set, including his grappling ability, which could pose problems for Kara France, who has traditionally struggled against strong grapplers. Erg's performance against Alexander Pantoja, even in a losing effort, showcased toughness and compatibility to hang with competition. Given these factors, Erg is often viewed as having a slight edge, particularly can utilize his size and grappling and neutralize Kara France striking. However, it's expected to be a close competitive fight. I got Kara France. Yeah, Kara wins. Ty will win. Rosen fell off. I mean, that's a tough one to say. But I got Kara France. ChatGPT believes it's going to be a very close fight, which makes sense because Kara France is ranked number 4. Steve is ranked number 7. It's going to be a close fight. We got Gamrot versus Dan Hooker. Oh, that's a very interesting fight. So Beneil Dariush fought Gamrot, knocked him out. Dan Hooker, this is a great matchup, actually. This is a really good matchup. Dan Hooker hasn't fought in a while, so we don't really know what he's coming with. Gamrot is a grappler. He has good striking. This is an interesting fight. It's a very interesting fight. My heart says Gamrot, but my mind says Hooker is gonna come with some heat. So Dan Hooker, you know, he's all tatted up now. He's went through some type of transformation. Gamrot, he's a great fighter. I'm gonna go with Hooker. I'm gonna go with Hooker in this fight. You going with Dan? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm gonna go with Dan as well. You know, it should be a good one. I got Hooker by knockout. I got the Hooker by the knockout. Tai Tuivasa versus Jorginho Rozenstruik. Tai Tuivasa is ranked number 10. Jorginho's ranked number 12. So I personally, I'm gonna go with Rozenstruik. I'm gonna go with Rozenstruik because Tai Tuivasa, I think he leans more on his size and him usually being the bigger fighter and brawling with guys to get the knockout, you know. And when guys are usually his size, it usually doesn't work. It usually doesn't work like that for him. When guys are his size, usually it doesn't really work out like that for him. So also, Rozenstruik is a hell of a striker. You know, he's the same type of striker like Alex Pereira and Adesanya. This dude's had like over 80 kickboxing fights. Rozenstruik, I think he's gonna knock him out. I think he's gonna come out with it. A lot of leg kicks, push kicks, similar to how Ciryl Gane did it, but Rozenstruik has a little bit more knockout power than Ciryl Gane. I think Tai Tuivasa is the energy I get from him is kind of like he's lost a couple fights and he, you know, maybe is thinking about packing it up. You know, this fight is a must win for him. Not that if he loses, he's gonna get cut. I don't think they would ever cut him because he's an exciting fighter and the fans love him. But this is this is gonna be an interesting fight. It might even come out as fight of the night. You know, actually, nah. Dricus versus Adesanya probably fight of the night, but this is gonna be a very good, interesting matchup. You know, so next we got Li Jingliang versus Carlos. I've never seen Carlos fight. I've seen Li Jingliang fight multiple times. Carlos is the favorite. I don't know Carlos. I can't say shit about him. I don't Jingliang. I mean, I've seen him fight. You know, he's a good fighter. He's a tough fighter. I'm gonna go with Lee just because I'm familiar with him. And then there's a bunch of guys I've never seen or heard of on the undercard. There's just too many fighters in UFC nowadays, so I can't even you know, talk about those fights. There's so many fighters, but this whole fight card is looking to be a great event, you know. So yeah, hopefully we make some money. I've been taking some L's on some of these last fight cards. I took some big L's. You know, I do not recommend betting on fights just because unless you're really, really sure, because I've lost some money, man. I've lost some money in fights. I made some money on fights. The biggest one was when Francis fought Stipe. I was going to put money in on that fight, and I was like, nah, because I was actually in Vegas, and I was like, nah, you know what? Let me not do it. And if I would have bet the money, I would have made like $7,000 or something like that, $8,000 for, you know, and I didn't bet. And it turned out Francis went out there and whooped the dude's ass. He hasn't fought since, you know. But then I bet on Bo Nickel to lose against one of the dudes he fought, the big stocky black dude from Florida, because the odds were just too crazy. I had to do it. It was like you bet, let's say you bet $200, you could win like what was it? You could win like something like $8,000 for betting $200. So I had to do it. You know, I had to do it. But clearly, Bo Nickel went out there and washed him. But I do not recommend betting on MMA. MMA is just too volatile. There's just so many things going on. It's not like a basketball game. It's not like you know, a baseball game. You really never know what you're gonna get in MMA. You know, you really never know. So the last UFC Manchester, I took L's on that card. Pretty much every fight I betted on, I lost on. The Leon Edwards fight, the Bobby Green fight, or King Green fight, and what was the other one? The Curtis Blades, Tom Aspinall fight. I took big L's on that card. So hopefully we can turn it around this time around, you know, and get it back, you know, and this will be a good event, you know, for the real African champion. You know, Dana said if Dricus wins, they're going to go have an event in South Africa. It's better than nothing, but let's have an event in somewhere like Nigeria. Let's have an event in somewhere like Ghana or somewhere like, Accra, Ghana. You know, there's places in Africa that you can have these events. You know, there's 52 countries in Africa. You can have a UFC event over there. Just fucking open your mind and quit being boxed in. Go have an event in Africa. A lot of Americans are just so boxed in and they don't really know, like, outside of America. Africa is not what you see on TV. It's not a bunch of poor people everywhere. Like, no, there are parts of Africa because a huge continent. There's 52 countries, right? So there's poor parts. Yeah, there's Saharas and there's jungles and stuff in certain parts, but there's also really well-developed, rich cities such as Accra, Ghana, such as Lomé, Togo, you know, South Africa. South Africa isn't the only place that you can have a UFC event. You can go to Senegal and have a UFC event. Senegal has, look up Senegalese wrestling, right? Matter of fact, I'm going to show you guys right now. Senegalese wrestling, they had these wrestling matches, and these dudes are fucking beasts. These dudes are super beasts, and the events have like 80,000 people in them. And these guys aren't really getting their chance. And these are all heavyweights. These guys aren't really getting their chance to compete in MMA because, you know, UFC just doesn't want to go over there just because, like, look at this. There's dudes who are stronger than Francis Ngannou, who know how to wrestle big time. These dudes are out there, you know, like, look at this. This is Senegalese wrestling, and these dudes are heavyweights. You know, these dudes are doing great throws. This is technical. Look at how many people were in the crowd. Like, these are a lot of people. This is similar to like Greco-Roman wrestling, but if you get tied up with one of these dudes, they're going to throw the shit out of you. You know, you get tied up with one of these dudes, they're going to throw the absolute shit out of you. You know, so there's so much talent in Africa when it comes to fighting and martial arts. Like, look how many people in the crowd. You know, look at there's a ton of people there. And the reason they're doing it on sand is just because that's the traditional way to do it. But you could easily have a UFC event in Senegal, in Togo, in Ghana, you know, and actually they're actually throwing punches here. This is MMA. This is bare knuckle MMA, and they've been doing this, you know. They're throwing hands. They're throwing legit hands over here. Can you imagine? They're throwing punches. This is basically like pancration. You know, this is basically pancration. But look how big these dudes are. These dudes know how to fight, you know, and these guys aren't even getting the chance to fight in UFC or MMA, or, you know what I'm saying? So, to be honest, once these Africans start coming over, they're probably going to take over the game, you know, because a lot of these guys, like, let's say you go and you win a Senegalese wrestling championship. Where do you go from there? Maybe you do it for a bit, and there are like fights and you can make some money over there. But if you're trying to become a millionaire, it's probably not going to happen over in Senegal from fighting, you know. You probably just have a few seasons and that's it. But these guys are strong as shit. Like, look at that. Look at the strength there and the technique. These guys are strong as shit and they know how to fight, you know. And once they start coming over, it's going to be a wrap for a lot of UFC guys. Like, these guys are like Francis Ngannou, except they know how to wrestle, you know. Like, look at the technique here. And we all know wrestling is the hardest martial art in MMA. So, like, look, this dude's fucking huge. This guy's a giant, right? So, once these dudes start coming over, it's going to be a wrap. But the fight for Africa, UFC 305, Dricus versus Adesanya. I got Adesanya. We need to get more African fighters in the UFC. I want to see some of those Senegalese wrestlers in the UFC. One of my first pro fights, I believe it was my second pro fight, there was a Senegalese wrestler who also fought on the card. And the dude was huge. He was giant, super strong. He knocked the dude out very quickly. You know, he like slammed him on his head, knocked him out, TKO'd him on the ground. These guys are good fighters, you know. And matter of fact, I'm actually enjoying watching these clips. Let's watch a little bit more. You're gonna tell me, like, this dude is probably 270 pounds, all muscle. You're gonna tell me that these dudes aren't gonna come in the UFC and do damage? You know what I'm saying? These dudes are also tough as shit. They're ridiculously tough. The body shots, bare knuckle punching each other, you know. So why not, man? We could easily have an event in these places. Like, you know, I don't know what the rules are with Senegalese wrestling. I mean, they could throw, ooh, that guy that knocked out. Look at that. Look at that. That was a nasty knockout. Nasty knockout. Watch. Watch again. So if you're a true MMA fan, you should want to see these guys come over. You know, imagine if we had a bunch of Francis Ngannous in the heavyweight division. You know, imagine if we had a bunch of Adesanyas in the middleweight division. Look at that uppercut. There wasn't even much wind up on that. He was able to knock the dude out. Like, these dudes are dangerous when they come over. Look how big this dude is. And that's just all natural. There's no steroids there. Watch. Grab the head. Boom. Boom. Nasty knockout. Nasty knockout. Again. Bop. Bop. Real quick. You know, once these dudes start coming over, it's going to be a wrap. You know, look how many people are there in the crowd. Look how many people are there in the crowd. You're telling me you can't do an event in Senegal, or you can't do an event in Africa? Why? You can do an event over there. You know, I think you can easily do an event. I think people just need to stop being closed-minded and open up their mind. You know, there's a lot of places in the world that people love fighting, pretty much everywhere, and especially in different countries in Africa, that you could have these events. And I think a lot of Americans just aren't familiar with. A lot of people have never traveled to Africa or different countries in Africa and just don't know what it's like over there. You know, so that's why all these narratives come out with Adesanya was rich. He had a servant and blah, blah, blah. No, it's not. That's the culture over there. You can have a housemaid or whatever and not have to pay a lot of money for it because that's their profession. You know what I'm saying? You don't have to be rich. So, and especially a lot of different cultures put together their money. So if you have a family and you have, let's say, 5 sons and the sons are working, everyone lives in the house, everyone is pitching in. You could have a servant living in the house as well, and you're not rich. You know what I'm saying? That's how it is in a lot of places in the world. Like the Chinese, for example, a lot of them pool all their money together, so they all have a bunch of money. You know what I'm saying? So that's just how it is. A lot of people talking trash on Adesanya, this and that. Open up your mind, learn about different cultures. The fight for Africa, UFC 305, is going to be a great event, probably one of the best events in a long time, and I'm looking forward to it. I got Adesanya winning, flying knee. You know, Dricus is a good fighter, but I think he's going to get murked. I think he's going to get mauled, and I think he needs to learn a lesson for all the trash that he talked. We're going to go back. We'll watch a couple more clips on this Senegalese wrestling. Most people have never even heard of this style of fighting. You know, like there's 80,000 plus people in the crowd there to watch these fighters. You know, so you could easily, and look at this dude. Look at the muscles on this dude. This dude's not on steroids, by the way. This is just how they roll over there. Like I went to Africa in 2017. I went back since it's the first time I was a kid. There's dudes there who were fucking jacked. Like a bunch of Francis Ngannous who don't lift weights. They don't do steroids. They're just jacked. Like, look at the muscles on this dude. This dude is ridiculously strong. And you're telling me that if he comes in the UFC, he's not going to do damage? Especially he knows how to wrestle, right? Keep looking. Like, these dudes are throwing bombs. They might not have crazy striking technique, but they have the spirit and the heart to fight. And they had the wrestling technique. So I can't wait to see these dudes. As a matter of fact, you know, maybe at some point in my life, I will go and learn some Senegalese wrestling, you know? But I want to see more of this technique. Like, let's look at this. Do a haymaker. All right, that's not good striking, but there's still power on it. He buckled him, you know, and this is also bare knuckle. That's dope. UFC should go to Africa. A lot of people either fight or support. Oh, yeah, no, definitely. So, dude clearly has power, and he didn't even hit him with the fist. He hit him with the forearm. You know? Look at this fucking dude. This dude is fucking jacked. So, mind you, we'll never hear about these guys. We'll never hear about these guys. We don't know who they are, but they probably could beat up a lot of guys in UFC right now. And there's a lot of guys in the world like this who just aren't getting an opportunity to fight in the UFC or to fight in MMA, just because after their career or after the whatever the games are over there, whatever, they probably just go back to being a farmer or a construction worker or whatever the case may be. So you have an abundance, of talent over there in Africa, and you know, they're out there. They're definitely out there. You know, if you're a smart businessman and you know Africans, a good move would be to go over there. Like, look at that. This is a heavyweight doing this jump. And I don't know if you guys have ever done something like that. This is ridiculous athleticism. This guy's like at least 280 pounds. And he's able to jump and touch both feet in the air like that. Once those dudes start coming over, it's a wrap for everybody. Look again. I'm gonna replay that, because just so you understand, on where is it? Let's go back a little bit. Just so you understand, try to do this at home by yourself. Try to do this at home. I guarantee you're not gonna be able to do it. I guarantee you're not gonna be able to do it. That's crazy athleticism. If you show that guy how to throw a kick, he's gonna absolutely destroy someone's leg. Like, you know, everyone who wrestles over there is a heavyweight, and these dudes are all strong as shit. Look at the power. So yeah, so that's enough on the Senegalese wrestling. There's a lot. Basically, long story short, moral of the story is there's a lot of fighters all over the world, but specifically in Africa that's untapped. And you know, if I make a bunch of money one day, I'm gonna go out there and put on a promotion out there, because there's just so many good fighters out there. And that's why when we talk about, you know, this guy's the best fighter in the world, this guy's the best man on the planet, it's just not true, because there's a lot of people on the planet that you never hear of who are really, really good fighters who just for whatever reason will never be shown to light. You know, there's a lot of them out there, you know. So that's it for today, guys. Learn to fight. UFC 305, Adesanya, 3rd round knockout versus Dricus. That's how we're rolling. That's what I got. Learn to fight. Hit that like button.